So animals, of course, they communicate without words. They don't talk to us the way we're talking to each other now, but they do talk to us. They do have needs, desires, wants, experiences that they'd like to share. And also they have, as you know, they have an incredible awareness that is very expanded and intelligent, very intelligent.
Hello and welcome to the Natural Animal Podcast. I'm your host, Ruth Hatton. I'm an animal naturopath and just mega animal lover in general. Here on the show, we share thoughts and ideas about the nature of animals, their preferences, their behaviours, their ways of being, to engender a greater understanding, respect, compassion and love for all animals, companion, farm and wild. I hope you enjoy this show and I hope you love this week's episode. Hi everyone, today we've got a guest episode with a beautiful friend of mine, Jenni Madison, who is a spiritual guide and interspecies communicator. You're going to learn what that is in a sec. We're going to be delving into the topic of interspecies communication, but before we do that, let me introduce you to Jenni. Jenni lives, like me, on the Sunshine Coast hinterland. She lives with her animal family, surrounding farm animals, forests and wildlife. Her work is focused on developing open receptivity through meditation and practices that cultivate inner calm, higher awareness, and an intuitive connection with the natural world and the divine in all. She is a seasoned entrepreneur and dedicated explorer of consciousness for self-healing, inner exploration, nature connection, and rejuvenation. With an understanding of living in harmony with the body and with nature, and of course that includes animals, Jenni holds certifications in meditation and yoga wellness, spiritual counselling and interspecies communication with Animal Talk Africa, complemented by practical training in the heartlands of India, Botswana and South Africa. Jenni is the founder of fair trade organic food company Coconut Magic, some of the best coconut oil on the planet. And it's my show, so I can say that. And the online training platform Lionheart Workshops. She supports humans and animals with meditation, spiritual guidance, and interspecies communication. Jenni, welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me on your beautiful show.
Thank you for wanting to be on my beautiful show. The audience already knows a bit about you, and they're probably chomping at the bit, wanting to understand exactly, what is interspecies communication. So, Jenni, can you please share with us what exactly is interspecies communication, as far as your interpretation? I mean, you can speak about it generally, but I want to hear, Jenni's perspective on what it is.
Yes, great. Interspecies communication is our ability to communicate beyond the five senses or beyond the traditional normal way of communicating by talking and perceiving through our five senses. And it is an interbeing communication. So some refer to it as telepathy, others refer to it as intuitive animal communication. And really, these are just the same meaning, and we're just interchanging these words. And so what do I mean by moving beyond the five senses? Well, this is where we move into our intuitive sense, and we're really communicating through our inner perception, through our feelings, and we're tuning into vibrations. So interspecies communication is happening all of the time, and it's happening around us. It's happening from animals to animals, from humans to animals, humans to plants, plants to plants, trees to animals. It is a very natural skill. It is actually nature's language. It is the universal language. Telepathy is a universal language. And in fact, you and I are also communicating right now in a vibrational sense, even though you're listening to my spoken words. So as humans, we tend to put a lot more emphasis on what we perceive through our five senses. So, what you can hear with your ears, my words, what you can see with your eyes, my body language, you're perceiving my communication on that level. Interspecies communication is the communication that is happening deeper than that. It is happening by what you can feel. So, on some level, you can also feel the vibrations and the intentions and the energies beyond my physical attributes or physical expressions. So, every sentient being, all animals and plants, all sentience has a vibrational frequency, a unique frequency, a sense of a sentience, an awareness of themselves, an awareness of their experience, an awareness of their environment. I'm not telling you anything new because you are experiencing this yourself, as am I. So when we communicate between species in a language without words, another definition for interspecies communication, we are communicating through our vibratory emissions. The brain fires, neurons connect, and synapses fire emissions of vibrations. And when we can calm ourselves enough and center ourselves enough, and in a way step aside from the usual busy mind or intellectual perceptions, we can start to feel and sense through our sixth sense those vibrations. And through practice and through learning and through intention, we can perceive the communication, we can perceive this reality that is coming from another being. Interspecies communication isn't just about receiving or picking up information from somewhere. It is a very direct telepathic communication. So we attune from that calm centered reality with an intention to know and to understand the other being. So,
Mm.
animals, of course, they communicate without words. They don't talk to us the way we're talking to each other now, but they do talk to us. They do have needs, desires, wants,
Mm.
experiences that they'd like to share. And also, they have, as you know, they have an incredible awareness that is very expanded and intelligent, very intelligent.
So much in that, Jenny. I'm literally writing notes as you were speaking, going, "Oh my gosh, I want to touch on that. I want to touch on that. I want to touch on that." And I guess, I mean, yeah, I think one of the main things from that, or here's me with my pen. One of the main things from that is around this concept of the vibrational frequency and the energy, that is everywhere between, I mean, some people will say that everything is sentient, that even the rock or the chair, has, I mean, a chair is man-made, a rock is nature-made, has energy. And so we can connect in with the vibrational frequency of the energy that being is emitting. So, and yeah, how we're talking now with the spoken word, but simultaneously there is this energy transfer. And I guess you might think that you could be saying something to me, or I could be saying something to you, but we could be feeling, and that might be along the lines of we're trying to get this intention or this feeling across. But for someone who's really tuned into energy, they might be able to pick up if the energy is different or doesn't necessarily match with the spoken word, and it might just feel,
Mhm.
this feels quite off. But I mean, that's looking at it from like human to human. But animals would also pick up on that too. Like if you're speaking in your English language to your animal, but that doesn't align with what you're thinking, with what you're feeling. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jenny, but they are going to pick up on that much more clearly than you saying something but thinking something completely different.
But the beautiful point that you've made, and the beautiful truth and reality when it comes to interspecies communication, is the animals are always tuned in. This is their native, you could say, their natural language. it is us humans that are relearning to reattune our vibrational frequency to this sense of connected energy. And yes, as you said, we live in a sea of energy.
Mm.
And it is very common. And I like that you brought this example because I feel I often use this as well, and people will relate to it. You can be talking to another human and say, "How are you?" "Oh, I'm good, I'm great." But then you're feeling that it's not quite. And this is what is so beautiful about this work and this experience is energy never lies.
Yeah.
Animals always know your intention. They always know your truth. You cannot hide. They
Mm.
will see through you and your intention, your love, your discomfort, your insecurities, especially when it comes to animal communication, because quite often I'll refer to animals that I work with, especially in the trainings, as our teachers, because we are relearning, even though it's a very natural language, we've we've stepped away from it and habituated our minds to focus on the spoken word rather than transcend the five senses and move into that unspoken word. So what you're saying is so real and helpful because yes, we are always emitting a vibrational frequency, as are all sentient beings. Yes, everything at its foundation is energy,
Mm.
and this communication happens in the quantum field. It happens in the field of energy. And these, I guess, the differences, the stages of evolution, perhaps, of the sentience from a plant to, or from a mineral, let's say, will have a different reference, point of reference, different reference of cognition to a plant. We're moving now more into feeling sensations, and then a mammal where there is an instinctive intelligence. So we are attuning ourselves to appreciate and respect the communication or the vibrations from each of these different stages. And then there is humans who have an intellect and an ego, which has somewhat, in some ways, disconnected us from that united intelligence in a sense, or that energy, and yet at the same time it is what can lead us to the higher aspects of communication and intuition. So we are just coming back to reconnect and feel. I'd like to just that feeling as opposed to thinking some more.
And that brings us to like the instinctual, the feeling nature of a non-human animal versus this kind of programmed or learned thinking, predominant thinking behavior of the human animal. And I would see, and I know this from my own experience with animal communication, the um, the ability to, because you've used this word a couple of times, to relearn the skill of this type of, telepathic, you could even call it energetic communication, right? But to relearn it can be challenging for some humans because of this thinking, like overthinking, over analyzing, which that's how my brain works most of the time. um,
Many of us.
and many others too, because it's like, there's been, that is a skill set of the human brain, is to be able to
Yes,
think through things, to
yes,
analyze.
yes.
I think we're coming now into this time where people are starting to open up and see the benefit of the quiet or the quieter mind, and what information can be accessed in that space. And hello, we can talk to the animals, right?
Right. We can perceive much greater and more expansive, expanded states of reality. And that brings me to the point that, as I mentioned, this is telepathy. The actual definition of telepathy or translation is feeling at a distance. So we can communicate with animals on the other side of the world. There's distance is not an issue. We're connecting into that unique vibrational frequency with our intention, with an open heart and an open mind. We were born with two powers. We were born with the power of reason and logic. This is the human mind and the power of intuition. Perhaps we've just exercised reason and logic over time a lot more, and it served its purpose. Look at our technology, our developments, it served a great purpose. We can have this conversation now thanks to this. So, how about it's just that we've lost that essence of our intuitive power as well. And imagine when we bring the two together, because we still use some of that reasoning mind. And animals too, they have a sense of reason, and they, we want to come to agreements with them in some areas if there is an issue of some kind. We try to understand and come to an understanding so that everyone can be happy. So, at its core, I feel this work of interspecies communication is here to help us to create a deeper sense of empathy, yes, of our own sentience, the sentience of others, and harmony in our own home environments, as well as harmony in the natural world. Because without it, we're going to be heading for a very quick destruction. And so it's quite important, helpful for us to develop this level of connection and understanding and communication. And just to bring you to that busy mind sense, the this can distract from the stillness or from the communication. It only takes a little practice to return home. I often say to people, a peaceful mind and intuitive communication is very much your natural state.
Mm.
So all you need to do is be there. And it's a returning home. Our ancestors, they lived this way. We do know deep inside.
I love how you say that it's returning home, right? And I also just wanted to make the point around this relationship piece, like the ability to communicate with our animals and even the animals out there in the wild, not just the animals in our homes. That does create, I think you use this word as well, harmony. Did you say harmony?
I did, yes.
I imagine that. But it's like any relationship, a successful, healthy relationship needs communication and understanding and, for want of a better word, compromise. And so it's like, okay, you need this, I need this. How can we meet in the middle so that there can be this harmony in our relationship? And just like we do that with a human partner or family member or associate or friend or whatever, because it's not limited to the home, it's external to the home as well. It's about harmony in living because, that's what we would all strive for, I would imagine. But when we can meet our animals or any animals on that level where there is a deeper level of understanding, I think that is going to deepen that relationship, which is beneficial for both human and animal. Mm?
I feel something important to add to that is it's truly a state of reverence. It's a state of respect. And what our ancestors, native indigenous cultures still today, there is a sense of equality. And when the human intellect got a little bit out of control, perhaps adventurous, to put it kindly, the sense of reverence was lost for our brothers and sisters, our non-human brothers and sisters, the ones both at home, the entire natural world.
Mm,
And reverence is not so much about what I want and what you want, as it is about this level of living, coexisting together in harmony, and being more attuned to somewhat the needs of others. So there does need to be a fair dropping of the ego is very helpful. And that is what's actually very beautiful about this work, because when the ego is dropped a little, there is a sense of peace. There's a very deep sense of unity and connection. And again, I'll come back to that word of coming home.
mm,
So, reverence and love. Quite often in these teachings, we will use the word unconditional love. Why unconditional? There's really only one kind of love. Love is love, pure love. But we as a human species have learned to put conditions on these love, this because it's coming back to the self, what I want, what I need, as if it is more important than what the animal wants or needs.
Mm.
And so this reverence and equality for all species, not just the ones that are acting or behaving or looking in the ways that we like, but all species, because they too have a purpose. They too have a reason for being and a
Mm.
purpose in this world.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you're so speaking my language in terms of, and that's kind of like the underlying premise of this show is to really help people to um, have a greater understanding, respect, and compassion for animals. And of course, that doesn't. I certainly don't mean that it's got to be limited to animals. Of course, to every being on the planet.
We
Um,
try.
but, I choose to focus, my works with the animals, but some people like you work with both, which is amazing. But yeah, it's just there. It is about having that reverence and like using your words because I love them, dropping the ego, even if it's just a little bit, to allow someone else's
Mm.
needs or desires to shift up. I'm totally stumbling over the words here. To become more even keel with our own, because we're not any better than them. I mean, you and I know that, right? We are equal. But there is that prevalent, thought in society that is slowly reducing. I definitely see it reducing around, oh, they're just animals and we're more important than they are because we're humans and they're animals. Mm.
Mm.
So I just wanted, before I go to the next thing, I just wanted to touch on something that I still got on my notes here that I didn't even, from your answer to my first question. Just probably things that I really want to emphasize on. And I think we're going to have a visitor soon for those who are watching this on YouTube. A visitor is
Wonderful.
about to come up on the table. Come and say hello, darling. Um, and here he comes. So for those of you who are listening, my cat Max, who often comes and joins into these calls. The language of nature, so telepathic communication being the language of nature. And also the senses, so picking up the sensory basis of this type of communication. And so can you talk a bit about that around how that might show up utilizing the different senses?
Extrasensory perception. So I'm going to bring it back to the inner world. This is inner communion, this is inner communication. So we are perceiving from what we are experiencing internally. And intuitive communication, telepathic communication, when I send a question out or a message out to another being, an animal, I I will have the thought and the feeling around my question, and a mental image will naturally be created. This happens unconsciously, so it's happening anyway, so there's no need to do that. And the vibration, the bundle of thought and feeling energy with my intention is directed to that being. That being, their vibrations will then come back to me in response to my question or presence. And how I receive that communication is not necessarily how they send it. That
Mm.
is going to depend on my inner workings, and it's also going to vary between different people. Overall, it may come as a visual image. I was communicating with a chicken the other day, and I said, "Why are you having this issue with your throat?" She had a sickness that was building fluids. And she said, "It's the food I've been given." And I instantly received an image of white bread.
Mm.
And when communicating that to her person, it all made sense. So that came very clear to me as an image. One time when I was communicating, and this was during my training, and we were doing a tracking session, I had 15 minutes to track a dog who was in Denmark. And the person and I were set for this 15 minutes, and it was a training, so I was being assessed, and I had to track what the dog was doing, experiencing during that 15 minutes. So I went about the practice, and afterwards I said to her, "Did you feed your dog a treat?" While I was doing this exercise. She said, "Oh, yes, I did, because I needed her to move from outside." I tasted that treat. That's why I had the taste. It was like, "Oh, that was not very
You're right.
unpleasant." So in some ways those 5 senses are very present, but they're not. I'm experiencing the senses of the animal
Mm,
through my senses. And by being more in that 5 sensory experience, that's when we can help, it helps to emerge the 6th sense. So there's visual images, there's body sensations. We can feel what the other animal may be feeling physically, again, through our physical feeling body. And there is also sound. But these are, I want to emphasize again, it's coming from the internal perceptions.
mm,
So that is where intuition is communicating to us internally. Essentially, it's through here, the third eye. So I often work, when I work with others in this, is grounding the physical self and opening the heart and this area here to be able to perceive the internal communication that is happening. And it can come in words as well. Usually, what happens is the thought, feeling, the bundles of energy come in to the awareness, to my awareness, and my unconscious may then deliver a word to my conscious mind. So it's not that the animal is sending words, it's that I'm receiving it in that way. It's not that the animal's sending a taste or a picture, it's that I am receiving, translating the energy transmission in that way. So there are multisensory perceptions that are being explored and experienced, and we are using our own mental database, our own awareness to then translate those energies that we are sharing with another.
and I imagine that is probably the case, that every session can be quite different in terms of how you're receiving the information. I know when I do energy, it's very similar, the world of energy healing and animal communication or
Mm,
telepathic
mm,
communication, because, I often, I've had situations where, yeah, you can, one session might just be purely visual. One session might be feeling. Like, I remember a session where I all of a sudden got really itchy. And I didn't know that this dog was an itchy dog. And so I asked after the session,
mm,
does your dog have itchy skin? Yes. I'm like, that explains why I couldn't stop scratching my arms.
mm.
And then the session ended and no more itching. And so that was obviously that sensory of that. I can't remember what you call that, but it's a
Kinesthetic.
yeah, the kinesthetic, or you might say the clairsentient, in that you're
Mhm.
feeling, the physical feeling of it.
Touch.
And
Mm.
the taste is a weird one, especially if it's some kind of like dog treat that you'd never want to eat, right? Gross. I remember once I smelt this. You're going to love this because I know you love cacao as much as I do. But I was doing a remote energy healing session, and I all of a sudden smelt melting cacao, melting like cacao butter. I'm like, where is that coming from? I'm here in my spirit room. No one's in the kitchen. No one in my house is melting cacao. It was so bizarre. But I guess the point of me sharing examples from my own experience is to really emphasize, like, I love how you shared what comes up for you when you're doing this, because again, for any other animal communicator might be different, or they may only see
Yeah,
visual
yeah.
images that might
Mhm.
be, their strong clair
Yes, that's right.
sense, and so that might be all they receive, or that might change each time. But I think it's useful, particularly when people are starting. Some people that are listening to this, they're probably already, like you. I remember you said this to me once. I said to you, I can't communicate with animals. And you're like, yes, you are. Yes, you can, Ruth. I'm like, whatever. Um, but it's like we are already
Doing it.
doing it. And so I think by sharing the different ways of how we individually might receive those messages, that they can be different on any given day, and there can be multiple different modes of delivery of that message. Do you agree with that? Or do you have something completely different?
No, 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 that's exactly right. It's going to vary from person to person, but I have found that there are some that are more predominant. Like I find for myself visual, but first and foremost, I feel I receive a direct knowing. I just have this knowing of this information. And others receive more visual images, others receive more feeling. What I, in trainings, we come to see what's more common for that person, what's more
Mm,
their mode of receptivity. It's quite not unusual for an artistic person to receive more in a visual image sense, for
mm.
example.
The
Um,
senses there, they're kind of like the senses that they maybe have more familiarity with. Also, those people who have quite active imaginations, daydreamers, also might
mhm,
see things more of the visual because they're used to
mhm,
imagining, oh my God, what
exactly.
if this happened? Whereas some people will like feel it. Whereas I'm with you, I'm like more visual and knowing too, which is the clear cognizance or even the words. Do you have words that drop in?
That's right. That's right. And
Mm.
sometimes just get a sentence or phrase or words will just start to flow. Yes.
Yeah. And what about the animals? Because you're speaking about how it's how it arrives, right? The form that it arrives to you. But do you have any insight, any awareness or understanding about how the message leaves the animal? Just say, two-way conversation. Here we're having talking conversation. Yes, our energies are doing their own separate thing too. But the animal, the message, I imagine this kind of like, and the people listening won't see me signaling this, but I imagine there's some kind of like arc. So you've got the animal here to the left, and then the little message they want to send you rises up, and then in the middle, doesn't necessarily have to rise up, it could rise straight across. And then in the middle, there's kind of like this interpreter. And it's like, okay, it's going to be best for this person if she receives it this way. And so then it gets interpreted. And then it goes along to the human. Oh, there's Bodhi in the background. It goes along to the human, the animal communicator, or the person having this communication in a way that they can understand it. Did I lose you with that?
No, I'm just thinking about what you're saying. It's maybe not so
Linear
linear method. There is a the word
methodology?
methodology to
Yeah.
connecting and communicating. There is a methodology. Remember, we're speaking now on energy vibrations. Thoughts and feelings are being emitted and received.
Mm.
So energy is being transmitted and then received and perceived by an individual. So the animal is emitting their thoughts and feelings all the time, as we are.
Mm.
But in a specific communication, they're responding perhaps to a direct communication, a direct question. So it's not that they're sending a mental image or sending a smell or a sound. No, they're sending an energy, and there is no intermediary. No, there's simply we're receiving that energy, and then as it comes in through the unconscious, we are naturally, and this is where I'll step aside to something else you said. Yes, we can all do it. It's just that we're not putting our awareness there. So as the information comes in, the energy comes into our unconscious. What we want to start to do is bring our awareness more to the energy vibrations that we're receiving, and then let the process unfold naturally. The
Mm.
understanding, the translation. So we're not trying to make it an image or make it a feeling or make it a word or an emotion. We're just experiencing the
Mm.
energy, and then we're present to that energy. So For someone who says, I can't communicate or I don't communicate, you are and you can. You're just not putting your awareness to the energy, to the communication that is already happening. You're not listening. You're listening to the outside sounds. You're looking at the body or physical. It's so easy to get caught up in the physical body. What's the body doing? Oh, well, it must be this. What's the body doing? It must be that. What's the eyes and the nose? Do you know what, to the physical attributes?
Analysis paralysis.
Yes, you're not. So you're not. So what we're doing is we're just relearning to listen internally to the energy that we're receiving, to the vibrational frequency, the communications that we're receiving, and allow the process to unfold. And that is what the relearning is, very much, again, coming back to our natural state by letting the busy mind move into the background as best as possible. There is a state of stillness, a calm within us all. It's there. It's no matter how busy the mind is, there is beyond that a sense of calm. The more we bring our attention there, the more we start to attune to the more subtle frequencies, the subtle vibrations. But yes, there is an intention, and yes, there is a direction for a direct communication. But for the internal processing, much of that will happen naturally when we just allow it to. And so, with our intention before a communication, it's a good idea to set the intention that I will communicate and receive telepathic communication clearly. So, that receptivity, that process of receiving the frequencies and then being able to translate them in a way that can be understood, let's allow that process. It's intuitive
Mm.
communication, and that will come from the calm, centered, open heart, open mind, open receptivity.
And this is because not only do you do offer these interspecies communication sessions with animals for people to, so the people hire you to have those communications with your animals, but you do also teach people. And I think we sure saw, heard, witnessed a very small aspect of that teaching that you do to help people relearn that skill. Excuse me. And so dropping the things that I picked up from there is dropping into that quiet space, which for a lot of people, for most people, it's kind of like the first thing that's going to come up for them is like, okay, well, that's all well and good, but how do I do that? And then the next one might be, yeah, I love how you brought up, it's kind of like programming or giving yourself permission to receive information in that way, like opening up, I can't remember word for word what you said, but basically it's setting that intention to be open to receive telepathic communication. Are these like, can you give, so that's kind of like two things I can see there, two little tips is coming into that calm space, quiet space, and then two, setting that intention. And they're two really, really great tips. And I know the listeners are going to be like, oh my God, I want to expand my ability to do this without giving away all of your trainings. Obviously, we don't have time for all that. But are there any more tips, or if I've like bastardized anything, those two tips that I already shared, that you consider to be kind of like, if you can do this, you are well on your way of relearning how to communicate telepathically?
Mm. Mm. Beautiful question. I'm thinking now of the people that are currently going through my trainings, and there's a lot that I want to share. And I'm trying to trust is the word that comes, learning to trust the process. And of course, practice. You used the word expand. And that is also really an appropriate word. What we are doing here is we are learning to expand our awareness. So it is quite natural and normal for us to be always aware of our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own desires, our own needs. And that sort of rigmarole is going on all the time inside, isn't it? And there's a lot of this is conscious, some is conscious, a lot of it's unconscious, but we are always aware. We're always there in the background of just aware. A lot of the time we get caught up in it, but truly we are there as pure awareness, the light shining on the feelings and the thoughts. So often what I describe is let's take that awareness now away from ourselves and toward another being. And
Mm,
there's a beautiful experience that happens here because we come to realize that that awareness, that light, is the same as the awareness and the light or the divine in another being. Begin to experience this sense of oneness or this sense of shared awareness
mm,
and of seeing, knowing. And so I'm just going to come back to your question and the word of expand your own awareness. It very much is a journey of moving beyond yourself. And it is empathy, a very deep empathy. When that self is set aside, that noise or that I, me, I, we begin to then actually experience what another being is experiencing. And true empathy is the ability to have that experience without any judgment, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong. We are simply being with another being. And there is just something so incredibly beautiful about that. And as you can see, as you probably noticed, this is very much a spiritual journey. This is very much a journey of going inside
mm,
and expanding that light within ourselves, that awareness that is much of who we are. We would not exist without that awareness. We're always aware of different thoughts, we're always aware of different feelings. These things are changing. Those experiences are changing for us and for our animal companions and our animal friends in the natural world. We come to realize that we are the same awareness experiencing life, whether it be in a domestic home environment or out in the natural world. And those experiences are so rich and so beautiful, sometimes very challenging, sometimes very difficult, sometimes very wonderful and delightful. It's just, we're coexisting and experiencing all of this together.
I love that so much, because it is that it comes back again to that coexistence and the beauty. And yeah, it's not just beautiful, right? Because there's challenging things as well. But I think what I mean by the reason why beauty came in is the beauty of the depth of the connection that exists
Yes.
when we open ourselves up to explore that. When we believe, I think this is another thing as well that you probably
Yes.
cover in your training, when we
We
believe
can do it.
that we can do it.
We believe it's real and we trust it. And the more we
Yeah.
trust it, and there is another aspect, and that is to trust the animal. And I want to say something else that I know you'll appreciate, Ruth, is during trainings, of course, we practice with animals. And so, as you can imagine, in the early days of learning, it's important to ask the animal very mundane, simple questions. What's your favorite food? Where do you like to sleep? Because we can validate these things. But I'll tell you one thing, the animals, as much as they want to really go deeper, they want to explore beyond these mundane, what do you like, what do you need. These are important in some regards, of course, in day-to-day life, but it
I'm
it
not
amazes.
surprised. Like, they, sorry for interrupting you, but like they probably see it as an opportunity. Oh my God, this human can speak to us. Oh my God, I have to tell them all of this. I've been waiting to tell them all of this. Do you ever like get that sense?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I'll connect in and whoa, okay, a lot. Yes, it does. It can, and it can be the opposite. It can be okay, it's something to say. But yes, I've had it numerous times where it's just a flood of so much to share and so much to say. And what I wanted to say was the information can range from mundane living right through to mm, esoteric experiences from lifetimes ago. And it just is, and it's so important for us humans to not judge any of it and to just, we are we as an interspecies communicator, we are messenger. We are not to. We are just here to hear the truth of the animal, and it's going to vary in different situations, of course, as you know. That we are here to take the message of the animal and share it, and in hope and with the intention that a harmony will come. If there is an issue, if it's not an issue, quite often there's no issue. There's just, I want to know you better. I've had people come, I sense that, I sense this. Can you just find out for me? Sure. And it's a matter of just getting clearer on things that they already know. And that is something I can continuously see with people learning that come in. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, wow. And they're like, oh my goodness, wow. When they are in the right space,
Mm.
when they just learn to let go and stop trying. And I think I wrote about this. That was one of my first lessons from my cat.
I was going
Just
to ask you to share that.
stop trying. And I remember the experience. I was like, please help me. this needy new learner, and who was already fully aware, didn't need to believe, fully had experienced, clearly had experience. I'd experienced intuitive communication and communication from animals. And now I'm learning to do it intentionally. And so this is the difference. When coming to learn, we learn to do it intentionally, which is coming back to learning to listen to the inner receptivity and the different extrasensory communication as opposed to these words. When I sat down to communicate with this need, please help me, I don't know what I'm doing, help me, how do I do this? Shh, take your energy back. And I'll just never, that just stayed with me. And it's there is just such a beautiful sensation, sometimes no matter what the actual communication is, but to just be in that deep connection and that sincere curiosity, that sincere willingness. And in my experience, when a human comes to an animal they love it. They want
Mm.
they want to help us. They can see that we're the ones that have lost the connection. They can see that we've lost the deep reverence and understanding of the intelligence of life that is flowing through all of us, no matter what shape, size, or how many legs we have or don't have.
Mm.
They're in that divine play, that divine web of life. It's us that have
Stepped out.
disconnected. And
Mm.
in that disconnection, we suffer. We
Yeah, we
experience,
do. We do.
we suffer. And at the hands of that disconnection, they suffer.
I was going to say exact same thing. Yeah, it's like this cycle of that all stems back to this disconnection from nature and disconnection from the nature of ourselves, our true essence, which operates, if not, the same way as the animals do. And I remember just on little Bodhi's guidance, your cat Bodhi's guidance to you. I remember we were in the forest in my house and this came up in conversation. And I just wanted to clarify on this point because there might be a bit of uncertainty around what exactly you meant by the expression take thee or take your energy back. Wasn't it that the guidance was that your energy was external and it was to bring the energy back inward?
Yes.
So yeah, take your energy back, bring it back into you. Whereas you were probably doing what we would all do, being external. Oh, is this happening? Is this happening? Is that? Does this mean that? Does da da da? It's like,
Yes. A good word for that, Ruth, would be projecting energy. So needing or wanting something to happen, or in this instance, I wanted to experience communication from him. So I was like throwing my energy at him, and he's just like, whoa, back off. But he did it very lovingly, of course, knowing I was a newbie to this. One time I had an experience again in learning with my teacher's animals, cat animal, actually. She asked, we had to do some very specific question, and I sat down, went into my meditative. I was very like, okay, I'll meditate, quiet mind, quiet mind. This is a long time ago, quiet mind. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. I get an image of the cat. I go through the methodology and I'm like, all these thoughts and all this madness. And in between it all, what I received was, come back tomorrow.
Clear your mind. Come back tomorrow.
It was very clear to me that I just wasn't in. The mind was just going, and you know what? But to just listen to that subtle, and then I did, and I came back tomorrow, and the communication was, I passed. I passed the lesson.
What's like, if you go back to your training, which is ages ago now, right? Like, and you've done multiple trainings, I understand.
I did, yes, yes.
For the listeners or the watchers, Jenni and I have been friends for I don't know how many years. So there's many times animal communication and this just kind of stuff just comes up in conversation. So a lot of what Jenni's sharing with you today, I've actually already experienced, but I'm just experiencing it in a new way.
Okay.
But I think now I totally forgot what I was going to say.
About learning. I'm not sure if you
Learning, yes. So when you were your initial stages of learning, and how did it feel when you confidently knew, oh my God, I just had a conversation with a cat, like, holy hell, like how, that's probably not what went through your mind because we speak a bit differently, you and I. But what was that like for you, that kind of like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening?
I tried to give words to it a moment ago. It's just so beautiful because it's a connection and a caring and a love that is just present. It's just being present to the being of another being. It's just being present to the connection of two beings and caring enough to listen. So coming back to those teachings, there's a few other things I want to bring in. We talked about the reverence. We talked about believing and trusting that we can pop them together. Then we talked about love. This is also a space of joy. This is also a space of joy because it's a high vibration. We're going beyond now the physical. It doesn't mean the physical reality isn't real. The experience is very real. And as I mentioned, it might be pleasant, might be unpleasant. It is experience. Beyond all that, there is an innate joy. And this helps us to connect with the animals. This really helps us to connect with nature. Again, an aspect of our true nature. We don't love, we are love. We don't joy, we are joy. So we are really expressing our true selves. And that, when we can share that with another being on that level, it's a beautiful divine celebration. But it's not out there celebration, whoo hoo ha ha. It's just this inner sense of
It's peaceful, right? It's just like,
and peace.
it's kind of like or it's like it's like you said before, it is a spiritual experience because we are communing or meeting in a space where it's energy, which is spirit, which is one, which is connection, which is consciousness. And I heard someone, I don't know who it was, on some podcast or some whatever, and it's like, that is what we all crave, is that return. It's like bringing, again, I should call this episode Returning Home, right? Bringing that feeling of returning home, bringing in that feeling or remembering what it is to be spirit, of remembering what it feels like to connect in that space, which of course there's not a word for it, because English or whatever language you speak, any kind of man-made language, is not going to have the words to describe the energetic, spiritual experience. And beautiful and peaceful is probably the closest that we can get, or divine, but then what is divine? Have a show just about what is divine, but it is that moment where you have that close, divine, spiritual, deep connection that is not experienced in the day-to-day world of being a human.
we can bring another word into it, and it brings it a bit more into, I guess, the practical and how it helps us in life, and that is we're experiencing the truth of another, the truth.
Truth, yeah.
Mm,
And
the
being
truth.
able to, I think also the opportunity to witness
Mhm.
another's
Mm.
truth.
Mm.
But in that, we also get to witness our own truth.
Mm. The divine mirror. Yes, and
Yeah.
mm, I wanted to mention about the witnessing that you and it's important for, I think, for people to hear too, that, and I mentioned joy, and I mentioned for a reason. If an animal is in a distressing situation, then it's not going to help the animal if we come at them with, "Oh my God, you poor thing," and or "But this is terrible, this is awful, I," and all our own stuff.
Yes.
Pouring that on to really pull them down. So love and joy is so important because even, and it's not that we pretend that they're not having a difficult experience, of course not. That's not the truth. That we experience the truth from a witness perspective,
Or
from an
the observer,
empath,
the witness. Yeah.
observing witness, and a deep sense of empathy. We share the experience. I see you. I feel you. I know you. And they send that right back at us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when we think about, um, it is like this connection that exists between the human and the animal, and how if something is happening with them and we respond in our me, my, our point of, with the me, my, I point of reference. Oh my God, I'm stressed. I'm so stressed out. I'm so worried. I'm freaking out because you have this thing. That's that coming from that I place. What about your animal, for goodness sakes? How do you think they're feeling? You're just laying all of that, which is basically what you said, but another way of saying it. We're laying all of our emotions, the worry, the fear, the stress, on them as well. How is that going to help them heal or have
Mm,
joy or have a better life? It's like we need to check in and manage our own energy at this time. In your experience in having these conversations with animals, is there anything you can share around, like on that, you know, in that frame of reference around, just say where someone has booked in a session with you because their animal does have, a challenge that the human themselves is worried about, is getting stressed about. They've booked in with a session, booked in to have a set for their animal to have a session with you because they want some clarity and understanding. Where to from here? What am I supposed to do? What's actually going on with my animal? Are there any, obviously with maintaining privacy and confidentiality, are there any sessions that you've had that come to the front of your mind where you might like to share around, why they came to you, what came up? Because I imagine there's going to be some really interesting insights that may or may not even seem to be a direct answer to the human's question that they wanted you to ask, that
mm,
actually provides really deep insight to what is going on
mm,
beneath the surface. I think you get what I'm getting at without me giving
mm.
away to the
Yeah,
listeners.
I think it's fine. I think it's fine to share. There are several reasons for animal communication sessions, and this can be behavioural, health. Um, I think we might want to touch a little on that behavioural, perhaps trauma. Um, Animals have a memory of past experiences, so they don't necessarily. And something I want to touch on as well is, in amongst all of this, when it comes to health, behavioural thing, and their experiences, animals are very energetically, they are very aware of their energetic environment. And so it's very important for us to be aware of the energy that we are putting onto them. And I see it very often that an animal will have a health issue because they want to sometimes share the burden, or and intentionally share the burden. I'm not saying they're here to serve us, but I'm saying we're here to serve each other.
Yeah.
They are very receptive. We all know from experience that if we're sad or depressed, our animal will come close to us and be near us because they can feel and sense, and they have this even our cats, domestic cats, will tune in and comfort us in some ways, whether it be to come close to us or the opposite. And so they're always absorbing. that energetic environment around us. And we want to be, coming back to what I was saying before, being giving and expressing. It doesn't mean we're not authentic, because they know we can't not,
Mm.
they know our truth. But just to be aware and mindful. And so some sessions can be as perhaps simple as a trauma from the past. And an animal will have a memory, and then they will base their future experience. They don't sit there dwelling on the future, no, not like us human minds. But they may respond to a situation based on an experience from the past, based on a memory. So, an example of that is if there is an abandonment issue or a separation issue that can manifest as anxiety. And that is a simple fix. It's simply letting the animal know that you will be returning, that you're going away and that you will return. And that can be enough to go, ah. So these behavioral issues can be a shift in that. Health issues, again, that is often maybe very much a domestic experience. The animals in the wild don't have the same health concerns as our domestic animals. And this, so you can see how and why that may be the experience. They're just not subject to the same environments. They're not around humans the way our domestic animals are. And so they have a lot more to deal with in that regard. And so by communicating around these things, it just helps the animal to be heard, why they are behaving the way they are behaving, or why and what they are feeling when it comes to their health concern. And we are able to then ascertain a better understanding of what they need to help them in that situation. For some in a domestic, I've found they quite often they have a purpose and they know their purpose, or they feel they know their purpose and they may need a little bit of, and that could be an understanding from a past experience. So we may want to shift or change that if the behavior that they're displaying because of that purpose isn't quite helpful. Do you see what I'm saying? So I've had experiences where I've worked, just simply said to the animal, your human or person is going away for a certain amount of time, and after that, they're fine. Once the person's gone, the anxiety's gone. And is there anything more? Oh, animal leaving their body. That's another very helpful.
Mm.
Again, our domestic animals. With the wild animals, one thing you see, they don't seem to have attachment to life in the way that we do. And I see this time and time again. And again, it's very enlightening, it's very awakening to witness this as their truth. They don't have a clinging to life or an identification with this physical body in a way, an attached way that many of us humans do. We think that end of life is end of life. For an animal coming to their end of life in a domestic environment, what's most important to them quite often is the environment that's being created for them and how their person is having this experience. So it can be very helpful in that regard.
So I imagine there's been occasions where you've helped people who they've contacted you, they know their animal is going to pass soon, and maybe they've contacted you to connect in with the animal, see how they're feeling. Has anyone ever had a session with you wanting to know how can I support my animal
Oh,
through
definitely.
this transition?
Definitely, and that's often the way, yes, and often the way that is often the case either before their passing to help them transition comfortably. And sometimes an animal even wants a certain place. I've had animals tell me I want to be buried in that place. And
Mm.
and they're really appreciative. They don't need the body. Once they've dropped the body, it's like when we have out with certain piece of clothing and we're ready to disregard it. But some animals do appreciate the sentiment that comes afterwards from the human, very much so, because it's an expression of love. And it's a beautiful expression of love between the human and animal. And so
And it
sometimes
could be that in my physical form in this life, that was my favorite spot.
exactly. Yes.
Mm.
And so I like that. Thank you. And that's what I want. And that's how I'd like it to be. And they appreciate these. And often they just want to let their human know that their time has come.
Mm.
and ready to leave. And that itself can be very helpful. For the human, then may need a process of letting go and accepting and acknowledging that time, and how can I best support? Because that's what they really just need and want. And a very common one is, does your animal want help leaving their body
Yeah.
or not? How?
What's the most common way that animals wish to be supported throughout that transition?
It's very hard to put a general because each experience
Mm.
is so unique um, to the individual. But I would say, to get a general, is mm, it's very helpful for the human to be accepting when that time has come, and like as hard as difficult as it is saying goodbye to our beloved
Mm.
animals, when the time has come, it helps to be open-hearted, accepting, not try to hold on with machines or anything. Yeah, 'cause
Yeah. It's the energy of like keeping them here when it is their time to go.
it
And I
comes back to that
remember,
I need. It comes back to that I need, I want, me, I
mm,
need, I want. So just opening to what the animal needs, and again, that's what interspecies communication is about: opening to the needs of the animal,
yeah,
communicating.
honoring, respecting. This is their journey. We are sharing the journey with them. We have our journey. We have our together journey, but we also each have our own separate journeys, and this is their part, with very sacred time where, let them have a say on the way that they want to transition. And it's come up seriously, Jenni, this past week. It's come up a lot in my conversations with other interviews that I've done in my Instagram DMs. The crow outside has obviously got something to say about it too, because she's been very vocal at the moment. But this whole, a lot of people reaching out about their animal passing, and I know that, and I don't know which interview I'm going to share first, you or the other one, where we went deep on the whole passing topic, and where I shared my own personal experience, and just on this point of letting go, like it's really hard. Or it can be really, really hard to let go of our loved ones. And because of the process that I undertook with my girl who passed in 2022, I knew it was coming because she was with me at home the whole time, and I was able to observe and I was able to see, with each passing day, the closer she was to going. And then there was a point, maybe it was her second last or third last day, and I literally had the conversation with her. I can't remember now, but it was something along the lines of, don't hang around for me.
Beautiful.
If it's time to go, please go. I don't want you to suffer to stay here for me. And literally the next day or a couple of days after, she passed. So, and I think it's something that we think, oh my God, how can I possibly let go, unattached? Because I love this animal so much. But it's something that I think gently bubbles up inside of us. And depending on what the environment is like when we're going through that process and how it all evolves, it can just come out of nowhere. It's like, okay, if you need to go, please, So for those of you who are going through this at the moment, or if you've been through this before and you might recall what it was like and how freaking hard it was and everything, and you may be like, yeah, I remember literally feeling that letting go. And it's letting go with, like, it's love, right? It's another way that we can love our animals is by giving them the peace to go gently.
And
Mm.
freedom as well. Do you feel like you had that feeling, or did she communicate to you? Please let me.
No, it wasn't. I mean, Lily, she was not, she was grace in,
Personified.
personified. Like it was just this, because there was no veterinary intervention, and I was just home with her. And I was just observing her and being with her, and feeling what she needed from me, and having, and it was really just from observation. Like, I knew on the second last day she wanted to be outside. She couldn't walk down the steps by that point, but it was obvious. Anyone could see that she wanted to be downstairs. She wanted to be on the dirt, which is completely natural for them. She was preparing her body to die. And so I had this awareness out of who knows where, and it's like, okay, it was a Friday. I cancelled appointments. I was like, I'm just going to sit out here with you in the garden. And that's what I did for 2 days. And the boys came and sat with us at certain points. Elvie a lot, which was really surprising to me, because they had quite a clashing relationship. The battle for power existed between them. But he was so supportive during that time. And she, there was a moment where she wanted to go next door, which you hear that a lot. They want to go and they want to die next door on another place, But I was like, Lily, like, she was howling. I'm like, oh my God, the neighbours are going to think I'm torturing her. Because we were sitting right near the neighbour's fence. And it's like, Lily, I can't let you go over there. There's dogs over there. I don't want you going that way. And then she just settled into the dirt. And then there was obviously came a point where it's like, okay, darling, it's time for us all to go inside. So I picked her up, brought her inside. And the next day we went and sat outside again. It was just like, I knew the time was coming. It was just sitting there in those days with her, just being with her. And that probably opened up a level of receptivity around what she needed from me. So it was, the awareness comes in that time of trauma. I think maybe it's like this trauma that we can shut us down from an external humanistic perspective, and that's where the inner wisdom can seem to come out of nowhere. Because I don't know, like, I'm really struggling on how to explain this, but maybe some people will kind of understand the gist of what I'm saying. But I mean, I think anything with animals is observing the animals and learning who they are, learning what their needs and desires are, and that in itself is a form of communication or connection or relationship. How can we help them live their best life?
We're also learning to see through their eyes. We're also learning to experience their perceptions. And so it is about, yes, of course, appreciating, understanding their needs, but also just seeing the world the way they see it. And when we look through the eyes of a snake, we're going to see a very different experience to the eyes of a domestic cat or a dog and a bird or a plant. They may not have physical eyes, but if we sense into the sentience and the feelings, it's a different experience of reality. And with our own, the more we can learn to just, you were tuning to her perception, her experience in her transitioning.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's like, and that's we get that through the observation. It's like, imagine yourselves as them. What would you want? What's going to serve you best at this point? She needs to be on the dirt. She instinctually knows she needs to cool her body down in preparation for leaving that physical body. So it's looking at her and seeing her crying to be on the dirt, her moving to try and get to the stairs. Hello, she wants to go down the stairs. It's pretty obvious, right? But it's supporting her, giving her that, seeing that this is just as important as when she came in to the earth, into this plane of existence. This is her leaving this plane of existence. how can I, as a human, as her guardian, as her caretaker, how can I facilitate that journey for her so it um, it honors and acknowledges what she wants out of it.
Mhm. I've found the
And
best way to work with actually animals and humans making transitions. You just said this is just as important as when she came in. If not, it's even more important.
mm,
It is just, it's equally or more, even at this moment, because it's the reality now. It's more important because if we start to see it, though, not so much on a physical level, but start to realize how important this is, the soul is about to make a transition into new dimensions, into new experiences. Who are we to hold that soul back?
mm.
Who are we? It is so selfish, really. Sorry, I'll be straight to the point here.
Oh, I'm all about straight to the point
It's very
communication.
selfish to say, no, I want you, I need you.
Mm,
It's holding, the soul needs to flow, the consciousness needs to continue.
yes.
And when we can really see that for what it is and get beyond our own needs and wants and desires and attachments, we can
Mm,
just allow. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be a grieving process. Of course, there will. We love someone or something, anything, one so much, whether it be animal or human. We're going to feel sadness and pain at their, our heart is literally going to ache. Great.
mhm,
Experience that. Be
yes.
aware of that. Witness that. Feel it. Cry. Put pictures, candles, everything, but let the being that you love be free. Let the flow continue. I guess that's the point I wanted to make.
Yeah. And it's like that saying, probably not said in relation to passing animals, but if you love someone, let them go, you know? And even the extended part of that, if they're, what is it? If they're meant to be, they'll return to you or blah, 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 whatever. But, it's the first part of that. If you love someone, let them go. They're ready. They know. It's like what you said earlier. They know their time in this physical body, in this physical form, has reached its point where they've done what they needed to do. It's time. So hold them through that and let them move on to the next part of the journey. And yes, of course, there is going to be grief and there's going to be heartache and there's going to be sadness that you will feel and continue to feel for a very long time after, no doubt. But acknowledging, I think it's important to acknowledge as well that just because they're not here physically doesn't mean that they're not here anymore. And
Mm.
on that point, have you had experiences? I'm sure you have, of
And
speaking with animals
and
who have passed.
yes, definitely. And actually, as you say that, that's my little touches my heart because it was my animal who passed that opened this world of
Mm,
animal communication to me. So that one's a very, I love speaking with animals in spirit. And it's different. I mean, it's different in the sense that they no longer have the concerns and the needs and the requirements of a physical body, and yet it's the same in that we're speaking to the being. We're sharing awareness, and their consciousness is their vibration. We're communicating and connecting with the same vibrations. They're just no longer aware of the experience of having a physical body, and it's beautiful to have these reconnections, and that helps the grieving process. I
mm.
found in my own experience that as the grief was flowing, it was when I was in the times of connection, there was no grief because there was no loss.
Yeah, they were
There
still there.
truly is no loss. Then the human mind kicks in and it starts to come back into that physical, and it starts to grasp, and then pain occurs. But then when I would connect, and I'm sure this is not just we connect with that essence, there's no more grieving. It's gone like that. Poof,
When
joy.
we
Actually,
step
there's joy
outside of,
because
when
there's
we step outside of the physical self, because it's not about the physical anymore, because we can still sense that the connection continues to exist, but then the human craves the
in a
physical.
sense the mind. It's the mind. So when I do with the
Mm,
trainings, what we're doing is we're working with attuning the mind to a more subtle reality. So the mind is very gross by in this conscious experience of the physical five senses. And the more we work with our inner world and we attune intuition, we start to attune the mind to a more subtle reality. And that's the higher states of consciousness and intuition that we experience. And so the physical reality becomes the other way around. That becomes more real in a sense, but or as real, as refined perhaps as what this gross reality is, this physical reality. And it's, as you used the word beautifully before, is it's very expansive.
Yeah, it is, because we're expanding beyond the physical self.
So working with animals in spirit can be very heart healing for the heart of people.
Yeah, because you are bringing, it's kind of like the words that came through for me. It's kind of like you're bringing the animal back to them in a sense. And then they can feel like, oh, they're not gone.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And then it might even open up in someone a new way of looking at things, a new way of, looking at things from a spiritual perspective. I can still connect with my animal even then, though they're not here. And they might even start to observe things or feel things or sense things that they didn't before. Have you ever had a situation where you've spoken to an animal when they've been alive in a physical body, and then you've spoken to them when they've passed out of physical?
Yes, has happened.
Did you know, and this is just me being curious, totally off script here, did you notice a change in the energy of the animal between when they were in physical form and when they were out in a physical form?
Yes, yes, yes.
You
The
share
energy
that?
becomes much lighter, and if as the attunement, there's a more expansive, much lighter, and the communication's different. Their reality is very different now. It's the same being, the same memories, the same experiences, the same being. And there's an amazing, quite often there's an amazing amount of knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom is always there, but knowledge of even what's next that they are aware of at times. But yes, it's a much lighter sensation and somewhat more, even more expansive, because their consciousness isn't incarnate into this sensory limitation,
Yeah.
experiential limitation.
Okay, so was there anything that else that you wanted to share before we wrap things up?
Yeah. Was a lovely there were a few things that kept coming to mind during the conversation, but I hope that, yeah, I feel like we covered a lot. If
I
you have
think
any more.
so, and they can always be a part too. Like people, I always invite people to, if they've got questions, share them with me, because we can always do another episode, right?
Mm,
I
because
guess
it can go very deep, can't it?
it can go very deep, and I think we skimmed the surface today. I don't think we went to, like, in air quotes, crazy deep. Like, I think it was still enough that really anyone can kind of glean
The
what we're getting at.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, the process and
How it might be helpful, maybe.
that was literally what I was going to say. It's like when animal communication can be valuable.
Mm,
Oh my God, a valuable thing. A valuable thing to do, to not just if our animal has a physical challenge or health or behavioral challenge, but also to really to learn more about our animals and have that deeper connection with
mm.
them.
And
And there are
also to learn more about ourselves.
Yeah, because you mentioned about animals being teachers, and obviously your cat Bodhi was teaching you to learn animal communication. But animals, I'm sure you've had sessions where the animals have had messages for their humans to guide them on certain things.
Well, that happens all the time, but they do, and I always ask people who are going through my learning course to when we the last question with our animal teachers is, "What is the message you have for my learning? How
Mm.
help me improve?" And and that set aside, what I meant by that really was it's a journey of inner self discovery. It's a spiritual journey to come to know ourselves as beings, as soul, as consciousness having an experience in physical form, not the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And our animals, I guess, because they don't have that, because they remember, um, they can they can give us like very, very deep wisdom around how to evolve, um, spiritually, or you know find more joy.
But even if we're going through the process, learning to listen to the communication that's coming in, we have to learn to set aside our preconceived ideas, our own wants and needs and attachments and desires. So in that way, it helps us to grow. It helps us to see our conditioned parts,
Mm,
our mental chatter, to see it for what it is, and then to tune in to a deeper reality, a deeper truth, an intuitive way of living. And then as that intuition develops, it becomes more of a way of life. Intuition is a way of life, and listening to the inner sensations and the inner guidance that is trying to get our attention. Mm.
and that's such a deep lesson in itself in how to live intuitively, and it's obviously a big part of the work that you do, not just via interspecies communication, but by other work that you other services that you offer to people in more of the human side of things versus the animal side of things. Although, as we have discussed today, there's really no verses because it all syncs together. It's all wrapped up in each other and
Called nature.
nature. Exactly. Um, so I think I want to leave this chat with just encouraging anyone who wants to relearn this skill of animal communication. I know that Jenni has put together a beautiful offering. There's actually, I think it is still a one-on-one training that you do with people to help to relearn this skill. And I've trained in animal communication before, but I'm still got a long way to go. And for the listeners, Jenni's training is definitely something that I am planning on doing myself when I get around to it. Goodness me. But yeah, I will share the details on that in the show notes. But I'm always conscious of, when I listen to podcasts, I rarely look at the show notes. So Jenni, would you just like to share verbally your website so people can find you?
Okay. The website is thedivineway.org.
Perfect, nice and easy. Thedivineway.org. And then they can click on all that, then they can go on an adventure and see all the beautiful work that you do
Mm,
for both humans and animals.
mm,
I actually forgot. I have one last question that I ask all of my guests. If you
mm,
could change one thing about the human and animal relationship, what would
mm.
that be?
Mm. I would suggest for humans to feel more and think less,
Mm,
to attune on a feeling level what is really happening around them, and to watch what comes, watch what happens when
mm.
you start to open to the animals in that way. Just watch what happens and simply enjoy.
Yeah, I love that. Drop out of the thinking mode into the feeling and see what arises. It's like a little expedition, exploring. Oh my gosh, my words today. Explorative journey into what the feeling world can reveal to you.
And and to also remember and learn from our native cultures and ancestors how they revered the natural world and how we can receive intelligent communications, healings, connections, experiences, and deep sharings, just experiencing. We're here to experience this earth together. We're not separate.
Yeah, and there's deep, deep wisdom to be learned from the people who walked this earth before us. Yeah, definitely. And from the nature that exists around us,
Mm-hmm.
concurrently with us here. The wisdom
Mm.
is everywhere. So
So more being, less doing, more feeling, less thinking. But
love it. Love that mantra. Recite that mantra every day, and I'm sure it will come through. Thank you so much, Jenni. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here in this way. I do hope that, like I said, anyone who wants to learn about this, relearn this skill, if you do happen to contact Jenni, let her know that you came through here, because it's just like nice for me to know the little connection points that happen. And hello, there's that word, connection. So I hope everyone's enjoyed this show this week, and yeah, enjoy exploring Jenni's world and enjoy the relearning of this skill that we all have. And I'm excited to see how deeper and more enriching and how more deeply connected all of our lives can be through feeling more and thinking less.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenni.
Thank you.